Welcome to the Faded Spade Podcast with your hosts, Tom Wheaton and Sean McCormack.
What's up, gang? Welcome back to the Faded Spade Podcast. My name is Tom Wheaton, founder and CEO of Faded Spade, with our co-host, the poker boss, Sean McCormack. Sean, what's shaking, man? I am freaking stoked about this podcast today with Joe Stapleton. It was just a good time, right? Just a good time. So how about you, man? How'd you like the interview that we're about to share with Joe Stapleton and his entrepreneurial journey?
I wanted to be that guy and just be like, tell me a joke, funny man.
You kind of were.
It seemed like the jokes were on me a little bit. We talk about all the things going on in him, but closer to home for me, he's got a new show here in Vegas at the Space LV. It's freaking awesome. And I went to the opening night, and I was the butt of some jokes because I, of course, love to sit front row because the poker boss has to be front and center and ready to take those punches. But it was a lot of fun. Joe's story is amazing, and I didn't know a lot of his story. I didn't know he's from upstate New York. I knew he's from the East Coast somewhere, but a Smallbany, as he puts it, which is awesome. But I think our viewers and listeners are going to love his story, and obviously we all know him from the poker industry. He's hilarious.
I love that. Although he lived in Boston for a little while, he has a dislike for Boston sports teams. So that was my favorite part of the podcast.
Whoa. As we're pointing it all out here, he loves the city of Boston.
Yes.
Don't. And I always say that, I'm a fan of New York. I think the city is cool. It's, I always say, I make this joke because I am from Boston. I say that Boston is just a smaller scale of New York and cleaner. But, New York is a beautiful town, and millions upon millions of people go there every year. And I think it's an awesome city. And to dislike a city because your rivalry is with that city, I think is bananas. I've heard from New Yorkers, they won't even step foot in Boston. I'm like, you're missing history. It's such a gorgeous city, and vice versa. I know plenty of people from Boston, like, I'd never go to New York. I'm like, why? Because the Yankees? You don't have to go to Yankee Stadium. You don't have to go watch a Giants game. It's cool. It's still an awesome city. Go see the Statue of Liberty. Go see other fun stuff. Go see the Freedom Tower. There's a lot of history and awesomeness there. So, I'm getting off track here, but let's get back to the funny man.
No, it's all good. New York, greater than Boston, though, for life, just as a heads up. So here's the deal, gang. So, you're going to laugh, right? You're going to think Joe had some really awesome things to say in terms of advice for people who are following the kind of comedic trail or even like the poker entertainment trail. You're going to laugh, but you're definitely going to think, put the kids in bed because this is the PG-13, the R version of the Faded Spade Podcast. Laugh, think, grab yourself a drink. Join us for the entrepreneurial Founder Hour interview with Joe Stapleton.
Founder Hour.
All right, welcome to the Founder Hour segment of the Faded Spade Podcast. Joined by the man, the myth, the legend, Joe Stapleton. What's up, bro?
Hey, guys. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
That was the most fucking polite thank you for having me on the podcast we've had yet, right, Sean?
I got nothing for that intro.
Thank you for inviting me to be a guest on your podcast, guys. Thank you.
I knew we were gonna laugh a lot, but now it's just starting off that way.
Sean was so stern before the show. I wasn't sure if I pissed him off. I wasn't sure if he had glowing things to say about the comedy night. So I was like, did I say something at comedy night? But I think he's just his resting bitch face.
I'm not a morning guy. I am not a morning guy.
Well, thank you. I'm glad that you were able to do this because I was, we talked for a second about maybe you not being a part of this show. And I really, it was important to me that you guys were both on.
Hell yeah. And especially because Sean just came to the brand new show you have at the Space in Las Vegas. And I know we're going to get into that. But Sean, you went. It seems like you enjoyed yourself. Everybody I see on social media loved the damn thing. So how was your experience at Joe's show? And Joe, what's the name of the show again? It's LOLing in Las Vegas or lolling?
Fear and lolling in Las Vegas. Yes, that's what
lolling.
I called it. Yeah.
Yeah, and he made that very clear at the very beginning of the show. Guys, like we almost polled the audience. Should we LOL it or are we lolling? And I just sat there like with my resting bitch face.
What's your vote? What's your vote on that, by the way? Do you like LOLing or lolling?
I don't know. You crazy kids with your LOLs and all that stuff. I
didn't come up with that name, but I love it. I can't take credit for it. Ben Ludlow, the guy that's sort of co-producing with me, and I say sort of, it's because he does most of the work. I'm the one who's sort of producing. He came up with that name, and I was like, yeah, this is pretty much perfect. All of my names were like way too hard to understand. It had like 7 meanings. I was like, and there's this and this. Like, no, idiot. Like, just fucking keep it simple.
No, it's a dope name. Obviously, a toss up to the movie, of course.
Yeah.
No, I think it's cool. I guess my vote is lolling. What do we say?
That wasn't even a choice. Lolling wasn't a choice.
Jesus Christ.
You gotta take it slow with Sean.
It was LOLing or lolling.
Lolling, got it.
Yes. Got it. Oh wait, are you voting for lolling?
Oh, I'm just saying it correctly. Apparently,
he still hasn't made his decision.
What are you voting for?
I'm voting that I'm going back to the show because it was an excellent show from start to finish. It was really funny, and we actually, why don't we just talk about it now? Hell, let's just talk about it now.
Okay, let's talk about the show. Then we'll dive into the journey.
So we had a funny moment in the show, and a friend of mine and my wife's, her name is Jessica, ended up going to the show with me. My wife, I actually bought 3 tickets, so you guys made an extra ticket off me that I never used.
Wait, so you're saying Jessica burned you?
No, Jessica went. The wife didn't. The wife burned me. She got sick, so she stayed home and said, "You kids go." She knows how much I love comedy.
Does Jessica look at all similar to your wife?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Jessica wears glasses.
I thought your wife was there.
No.
Who I adore, by the way.
Yes, everybody adores my wife. Every single person in the world adores my wife.
She's wonderful.
Is that a problem? Anyways, no. So there was a funny moment in the show where one of the comics said, how do you guys know each other? And Jessica made it like as weird as possible. And
that was you guys. I heard that happen, but I didn't know that was you.
And he asked her, and she was like, "Oh, we're just friends." And he was like, "Oh, just friends." And like it became like this whole thing, and like everybody was like laughing, and I was like, "You could just tell him we're friends. You're friends of my life," and stuff like that. But no, she made it like totally awkward, and then looks at me and goes, "This is why I don't sit in the goddamn front row." And me, I'm like, "No, we're sitting right in the front. That seat's open. Let's go. I want to talk to people, and I want them talking to me. Let's go."
It's really important to have people in the front, so I appreciate that. Like, you've been incredibly supportive, and that is another level of support that it's really tough. Nobody wants to sit in the front row at a comedy show. So whether you did it out of being supportive or just because you're like one of the weirdos that actually likes it, it does affect everything about a comedy show. Has some sort of effect on how things go, from the lighting to how close the chairs are to each other, to the cocktail service, to if the acoustics are good or bad, and packing everyone into the front of the stage is, if you go to the Comedy Store, if you notice, that is where they start putting people first, and then they fill in from the back, because that sense of like being that close to it and being crammed in together really does help to generate the sort of laughs that you want. And being that it was a new space, I was afraid that there wouldn't be anybody up front. And then you have a literal division between the comedian and the first wave of people, and that makes a difference. Anyway, fucking boring. Comedy
no
science.
Way, that's great shit. I never knew that.
Who wants to fucking do science of comedy? Not me. This
whole podcast is going to be laughing. Like, I love this shit. All right, so let's do this. So, Joe, you know the whole purpose of the Faded Spade podcast, right? So,
I do now.
You do now, as of 5 minutes ago. This is to tell the entrepreneurial story of, folks in the poker industry, eventually the sports and entertainment industry. And I met you at Run It Up Reno last year and had the chance to actually go to your stand-up routine. And it floored me. It was awesome. You did great. And then how you got people up and they tried it, like overcoming that fear. I thought that was so cool. And then we've got
We're
to know
doing
each
that
other.
again, by the way. If anyone's listening who might be going to Reno, we're doing it again. If it's your first time going, I will get you up there. It's a great place to do it. It's supportive. I'll look over your material ahead of time if you want. If not, great. So we're doing it again. Go on.
Love it. Run It Up Reno. Definitely. It's in October again, mid-October. Jason Somerville, Run It Up Reno, Run It Up TV. They're customers and partners of ours. So Faded Spade 4-Color will be in action. Joe will be doing stand-up comedy, and definitely recommend if you haven't been there.
I got 15 whole minutes that is anti-4-color deck. It's just
okay. Well, podcast is over. So
I like to do this bit where I go, the deck's only supposed to be 2 colors. What's with them trying to cram this diversity down our throats? Whatever happened, you had a black and a red. We don't need these blue and greens coming in.
Jason says it best. Jason goes, I love them. We're going to use them. He's like, if you're 40 and over, you don't like them. If you're under 40, you like them. That seems to be his gauge.
I'm right. Just like millennial, I'm right on the line.
Yeah.
Get off my lawn.
Exactly.
Oh, please, Mr. Poker Operator. All right, back to Joe Stapleton. Let's talk about this, Joe. So it's about sharing your entrepreneurial story. As you know, we've talked about everything you've done in comedy and poker has been very entrepreneurial. So let's go to your roots, man. I know you're from New York. I know it pains you as much as me to see this dude in his Boston banner up there. So tell us about your roots, man. Where you from? And then what were some of your goals growing up? And was comedy even part of it?
Well, first of all, I want to say that when you originally asked me to do this, I was like, I'm happy to do a podcast because I love attention. But I'm not really an entrepreneur. And the more I thought about it, you made a case for it. And the reason I'm just saying this is I think people out there may come to the same realization I did, that yeah, when you're a sole entity, when you're a comedian, when you're a freelance, whatever, you are a business. So thank you for having me on the show. I just wanted to say that. And I've realized that I kind of am a business. What's that Jay-Z line? I'm not a businessman. I'm a businessman.
You're damn right.
Hold on.
That's exactly what it is.
I think I might have got that wrong. Anyway, upstate New York, or as I like to call it, Smallbany, is where I am from. If you want to know what that's like, picture Alabama but cold. It's a lot of we'll just call it like old schoolers. A lot of churches and guns and pickup trucks and things that aren't exactly my favorite things in the world. If you like those things, that's great. But that was a place I wanted to get out of as quickly as I could. And I escaped fairly early. At 17, I graduated high school. And guess where I went? I went to Boston.
No shit.
Yeah. And so even though I have a thing about Boston sports, because y'all are assholes, I don't care. Like, I don't have a team. I just don't like the Boston teams, which is even worse. Although I fucking love Boston.
Really?
Boston is what is pound for pound maybe the best city in America. It was a perfect place to grow up, if you will. When I was 17 years old, my first time away from home, I got everything about being in a big city without most of those really horrific big city problems that come with it. Like, Boston is just such a great starter city. And it's got great spirit, and the whole sports thing irritates me because I had never been to a city before where at the Yankees Red Sox game, they would chant Yankees suck. And then at the Yankees Blue Jays game, then at the Red Sox Blue Jays game, they chant Yankees suck. And then at the Bruins game, they chant Yankees suck.
It's about right.
And then on St. Patrick's Day Mass, they chant Yankees suck. I had never been to a city that hated something so much. And it just so happened that I was a Yankee fan, and I was an idiot 19-year-old college student who thought it was funny to wear my Yankee jersey loud and proud at Fenway Park. And I have this to this day. I still wear this little chain. It's like this Italian fucking Genzo chain.
Yeah.
But I used to wear it outside my shirt like a fucking asshole.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And
We all wore the chains outside our shirt then, though.
I have this distinct memory of this guy going, "Hey, Yankee fan, nice pepper. Nice fucking pepper, Yankee fan." So I got to I actually got punched in the back of the head at a Red Sox game and don't remember the rest of the game. Like, got basically.
I'm sure it was the punch and not the beverages.
No, I didn't drink. I wasn't 21 yet. I was a guy that was like, I was pretty conservative myself at one point in my life, and I was like, that's the law. You drink when you're 21 years old. And I made few exceptions to that.
That sounds pretty spot on. And, I always tell people Boston is a beautiful city. It's got it's got great colleges. It's got great history. I mean, it's pretty much where America started. You know what I mean? And like a lot of people are very old school about things, but in a good way. There's a lot of, like moving out west has definitely changed my perception of like how different and how much of a melting pot we actually live in this country. You could almost divide America into like 6 different countries. I mean, it's insane. But in Boston, they're very, by the way. they're yes. There's a lot of like family values still intact, and it's it's like, people still eat the dinner table, and there's like when I go home, I have to like, dive back into that culture a little bit. And it's a great city, but then you're right with the sports. It's like, that's where the line is. That's, it's just like a completely.
Everyone's at home, like eating with a knife and fork, like big old waspy New Englanders. And they're like, they're saving it all up. And then they get outside and they're like, Yankees fucking suck.
It's true. He's right. Like, you could be at any sporting event. You're at the high school girls field hockey championships, and they're like, Yankees suck. I mean, it's crazy, but Massachusetts is definitely one of those states that takes their sports very seriously, regardless if we're winning or losing. And you're right. Since 2001, we are just assholes, because if you think about it, from the late 80s into all of the 90s, we didn't win shit.
Yeah.
We didn't win shit. Basketball was owned by the Bulls. The Celtics did nothing. The Bruins did nothing. The Patriots were the Dolphins, basically. They were awful. I mean, we went to the Super Bowl one year and lost to the Packers. But the teams were and the Red Sox didn't do anything for 86 years.
Don't you miss the curse?
No!
I miss it. Like, I love streaks, whether they're good or bad. And when that got broken, I was like, oh, baseball's kind of boring now.
Boring as hell, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I will agree to that to some extent, because even though I was rooting for the Cubbies, because, I was like, oh, I know how it feels to not win for so long. When they won, it was like, right. Oh, that's anticlimactic. It's like, now what are we rooting for?
Right,
you know what
exactly.
I mean? But
Joe, what brought you to Boston, man? Like, what brought you there?
I went to college in Boston. I had a few choices of places I wanted to go to. I really wanted to go to. I knew I wanted to be in television, film and television, and I couldn't afford something like NYU or anything West Coast. And so I applied to Syracuse, which has like a famously famous communications program. By the way, if I had had a good communications degree, I would have come up with something better than famously famous right there. But I didn't go to Syracuse. I went early admission to Syracuse, and they waitlisted me, and I was like, fuck them. I can go to lots of good schools. Fuck that shit. And I was also accepted. I was accepted immediately to Boston U and to Ithaca College, and Ithaca College is really cool. I visited there a bunch of times, and Ithaca's a fucking boss city. It really is cool, but I was like, I can go live in a fucking city, in a metropolis, be away from home, and live in Boston. It was a no-brainer, slam dunk. Went to Boston for a few years. I graduated early from Boston. I graduated after 3 years, and I wanted to I knew from the second I went there, I was moving to LA. I wanted to come out to LA to Hollywood. I was one of those people, and 5 days after graduating college, I was 20 years old. I moved to Los Angeles. I got my first job in LA before I was 21. I had to show a fake ID to get into the premiere party at Mad TV the first season I worked there, because it was at a bar. And it was actually like at a hardcore gay bar, which was awesome. Coming from conservative upstate New York, and my second month in LA, I'm like, I'm pretty sure that guy grabbed my ass. This is awesome.
Culture shock, right?
Yeah, it was, and it was I really consider that my life started when I got to Los Angeles. That's when my eyes opened up. That's when I really started to become my own person. It's when I realized that, I was never super popular in high school or in college. I had great friends in college, but I wasn't like the popular one. I was kind of like the hanger on.
Mm-hmm.
And I just realized that being an adult's so different. It's so much better. There's poker notwithstanding, because poker has a lot of aspects that are high school like to it, but like the real world, people don't give a shit. Like, are you a person of your word? Are you fun to be around? Can people count on you? That's the kinds of things that make a difference when you start to become an adult, right? Are you a hard worker? And so once I got to LA and I was like, oh my God, being an adult is like pretty fucking awesome. That's when I was like, okay, this is my life starts now.
What was your goal when you got there? Did you like say, I want to do this and I'm going to go fucking do it? Like, or was it, let me see what happens?
Yeah, no, I wanted to be a sitcom writer. And I moved to LA with the way it used to work back in the day was you would write what's known as a spec script, and you would choose a show that's on the air and write an episode of it. So I had spec scripts for Everybody Loves Raymond.
Oh, wow.
And the Drew Carey Show. And basically sorry, your question was, did you just go for it? The answer is I knew what I wanted to do, but I didn't go for it. Like, okay. I really didn't try very hard to do it. I worked, I played, I have fun. I got a job very quickly at Mad TV, but I was a production assistant. And so I kind of rested on my laurels and it was like, I did it. Like, I got a job on a fucking great comedy TV show. Here I am, LA. Now when do I become a writer? And I didn't write. And I did advance there. I eventually became the production coordinator. And then at that point, I was like 22 years old, making $65,000 in 2004. And I was like,
that's rich. A great salary, man.
You made it, right?
Right. Yeah, I was rich. I was making way more money than all my friends. And so I would get out of work at 7 or 8 o'clock at night. And I would go to the bar till 2 o'clock in the morning. And then I would do that 4 or 5 nights a week. And on the weekends, I would then really party, go to Vegas, do whatever. And so I didn't really chase that dream. I did stand-up comedy one time when I first moved to LA, my first year in LA, because Bobby Lee forced me to do it. Mm-hmm. And got me a great spot at the Comedy Store that I would fucking kill to have now.
Right.
And I did it once and I was not good at it, which almost no one is their first time. And I never went back. I never worked at it. It wasn't until around 2011 that I picked it back up again. So almost 10 years later.
No shit.
So I tell people this because I fell into the classic mistake of, I want to be a writer, but I didn't fucking write. I didn't write. I didn't work at it. I didn't do anything. I would like write a sketch every once in a while. I would like write tons of ideas down. I have notebooks and notebooks full of ideas. I don't have a single completed script from that era. And something that I will drive home for any entrepreneurs out there, right? Whatever it is that you say your business is and that you want to do, if you meet someone tomorrow who can make that dream come true for you, be fucking ready. Mm-hmm. Be ready. Because if I met someone back then who was like, I got an opening on a brand new sketch comedy show, give me your material, I would have been like,
whoa, no.
I don't have any fucking material. So you got to be ready for that. If you're a writer, fucking write. Be ready to go.
Love it, man. That's great fucking advice. I mean, because I'm sure there are going to be people watching this who have similar like goals and dreams that you had, whether they want to go to Hollywood and be a writer or comedian or commentator or anything that has to do with entertainment.
People come to me all the time and say, how do I get into poker media? Right. And I say, blog. Just write a blog, write about whatever, write an article a week, 5 people can read it. It doesn't matter. And then every once in a while, what happens? Poker News is like, we're looking for a blogger for this summer. And I just want to be like, if you did the thing I told you to do 6 months ago, I can promise you there's not a lot of people applying for this.
Yeah. Great advice. So, all right. So you're doing your deal, man. You're Mad TV. You're making a killing for 2004 and you're having a great time. Like, what next? What happened next? How long were you at Mad TV? And it sounds like there was some kind of transition after that.
So what happened was, it was the old television model of you would make new TV shows from about August until May, and then you were laid off May, June, July.
Okay.
So my good friend at the time, I graduated college a year before all my friends. A year later, they all come out. A good friend of mine named Scott Huff, he and I were just sort of creatively got along. In college, we didn't get along that well, but we were like really gelling, and we discovered poker together. He was the second person that came out of our friend group, me being the first, and we would sit around his apartment that had no furniture. We had milk crates. We'd set up milk crates and just deal out hold'em hands. We wouldn't even really play. We would just be like, oh, this one's a straight. This one's we were like deal to like 7 different spots and just sort of, just deal them and deal them and deal them and deal them. We played a little bit of online poker. I was like a $100 to $400 a week loser on Poker Room playing limit hold'em. And he applied in the 2005 World Series of Poker. He applied to be a card player intern.
Okay.
And got the job. And I was off for the summer, but he had gotten this job. And he was like, drive me out to Vegas. We'll do a night in Vegas, and then you can drop me off at my card player job. So we went. We played at the Mirage all night. We played 12 hours at the Mirage. And then when we went back to the car. The car had been broken into at the Mirage,
shit.
Stole all of his stuff. He was like packed for like 60 days of World Series. They took everything. And then I went and dropped him off at Card Player, no clothes, no bag, no nothing. And they said to him, do you know anyone else who can write? And he said, yeah, my friend Joe over there, a guy who's dropped me off, he can write. And they were like, do you want to be an intern for the summer? And I was like, sure, why not? Let's do it. So that night I drove back to LA, picked up clothes for me and for Scott. And then the next morning I went back to Vegas and I started at my very first event I covered was Lane Flack against Tom Worthman, heads up for a bracelet in 2005. And obviously we're all rooting for Lane Flack. I'd known the guy for like 2.5 hours and I was like, this guy's a fucking superstar. And Lane ended up losing the heads up match. And that was it. Yeah, I was a card player intern that summer. The next summer I went back, not as an intern, but as like a video producer because they wanted to do more videos. They were not a fan of the sorts of videos I produced. They didn't really get me. They didn't think poker was supposed to be funny. And I was like, look, guys, it's just me. Like, poker's fucking boring.
Yeah. Joke's on them now. Right.
A lot of time poker's boring. And so I really think that you got to entertain people first. If they're having a good time, then they'll be more interested in the poker. And they were like, we respectfully disagree. I went back in between. I went back to Mad TV.
Okay.
After 2006 World Series of Poker, I went back to Mad TV. And what happened was Huff stayed in the poker world and went on full time with Card Player and created a podcast called The Circuit. Which was originally Scott Huff, and I believe it was David Singer was the first. No, it was Mike the Mouth Matisow. It was Matisow, and even back then, Matisow became too unreliable to do a regular podcast with, and they replaced Matisow with Joe Seabach and Gavin Smith.
Okay.
So now you might be seeing some of the origins here of things that that we can remember more. Not ancient history, just regular history.
Yeah, 100%.
So Huff was brilliant at this, was great at making pokertainment, was a really talented, awesome podcast host, and he just didn't like being on the road. He had a girlfriend who was either about to become his fiance or was his fiance. He was like, this isn't really for me. He walked away from poker. That show went away. Poker Wire, which was owned by Full Tilt, decided that they wanted to try to recreate this podcast. They got Gavin, they got Seabach, and they said, who can we get to fill this other void. And Seabach and Gavin were friends with me, and they said, this guy, Joe Stapleton, he's the guy. He's the only one to do this. So I did it for a little while with Mad TV at the same time. And then they eventually said, if you want to host this show, we'll pay you full time. We'll pay you. I was nearly what I was getting at Mad TV. It was a bit of a pay cut, but they were like, this is your show.
No shit.
You're in charge of it. You're the executive producer. You're the host. We want, like, it's your show. So I was like, I can have my own radio show, or I can keep working at Mad TV. I left Mad TV. Unfortunately, that's when the UIGEA happened.
Okay.
The Unlawful Internet Gambling Enforcement Act, and the online sites thought that was going to be the end for them. And so they all stopped spending money for a little while.
Okay.
We know throughout, because of history, that stopped very briefly, and then they spent more money than ever before. But that was the end of Poker Wire.
Okay.
And then at the same time, Barry Greenstein decided that he wanted to start his own poker entertainment site called Poker Road. At that point, the show came back in a third different form. It was Joe and Gavin and Ali Najad.
Wow.
Things ended up not working out with Ali and Poker Road. And then I came back once again to host that show then. And that's when people actually sort of started noticing me and the things I'd put in. It was the first time I realized that, like, oh, people who matter, like, listen to this stuff that I do, watch the stuff I do. I had no idea people were actually paying attention. And it wasn't until I did this prop bet where I had to get tan. I entered into a prop bet with Gavin Smith and Joe Seabach and John Caldwell and a guy named Brian Lemke. And I had to get 2 spray tans a day for 10 days. And if so, then I would win $2,000.
Oh, shit.
And this prop bet, people finally started noticing me because I would walk into the Rio during the World Series of Poker. I think it was like 2008 at this point. And I'd be like, hey, tan guy. Jeffrey Pollack knew who I was. Norman Chad knew who I was. And I was like, holy shit. And so that's pretty much it. And then, like, a year later, I got a job writing for the show called Poker Tonight, which was a ultimate bet, was like desperately trying to repair their image. So they hired me and Seabach and Huff to create a TV show, a Sports Center style show about poker, where the executive producer would scream at me every single day and treat Huff and Joe like they were gods among men.
Wow.
And I was like, I was writing. They were the 2 hosts of the show. And I was like, this fucking sucks. Because when the show was good, they got all the credit. When the show was bad, I got all the blame.
Right.
And so then Poker Stars came to me and they were like, I made a friend at Poker Stars was like, look, there's this TV show they're developing. I think you're really good for it. I'm trying to get you in there. I can't really talk to you if you're still doing this other gig. And I was like, I quit.
Done. Easy.
I quit.
Easy.
I was like, I like quit. I was like, hold on a second. I quit.
Holy shit. Hold on. I got to break real quick.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah. That's it.
Who the hell is that?
That's him.
No, it is not.
Yeah. That's
Holy
the tan bet.
Shit. Look at that.
And when I become president, that's going to be my fucking Joe Stapleton mocks the tan.
Hey, well, look, speaking of tan, we just had Lynn on, right? And she was talking all about Tulum Tan. So there you go. Now just use Tulum Tan. There you go. So, okay. So I'm going to back up a minute.
Sure.
So it sounds like you kind of finished your stint off with Mad TV, and all of a sudden, all this opportunity started happening for you in the poker world. And it also sounds like you were kind of pioneering this whole, like, pokertainment, poker entertainment, trying to make it more like.
I'll say, well, I will accept that, except we're pioneering it in America. What I didn't realize is that people were doing it in other countries also.
Okay.
Which was baffling to me when I ended up moving to London and I saw all this pokertainment that the Brits had been doing. And I was like, oh shit, that's like the British version of me. But yeah, we were, Barry and Joe Seabach were really generous. They hired me on a full-time salary to do nothing but create podcasts.
Wow.
and come up with video content for the site. At one point I was hosting 2 podcasts on that site and doing it like a regular appearance on another, like a segment on another podcast. And, there are a lot of successful people that came out of that. Huff hosted a podcast on there. He ended up coming back to the poker world as long as he could work from home. So he ended up hosting a podcast. At first it was with Shane Schlager. And then eventually it was with Haralabab. So we've got, there's a guy who went on to be insanely successful, was already pretty successful at the time, but went on to be, obviously even more successful. He was just developing his statistical theories at the time. It was actually pretty cool to witness that. I was there. Amanda Leatherman was a big part of that whole equation. Ali. So I was doing a couple of podcasts, some video content creation. Barry was convinced that pokertainment was a thing, and I didn't necessarily agree with him, but I love that he believed in us enough to pay us and to make this more or less my full-time job for I think a year and a half, and I'm really glad that he took that risk. It's a risk I wouldn't have taken, and obviously it didn't pay off because it doesn't exist anymore, and I don't think anyone ever made one dime from it. But I'm really grateful that it happened.
Absolutely. I mean, so were you feeling pulled back to Hollywood at all during this time? Or did you just make a clean cut and you were like kind of all in on poker? What were those next couple of years like?
When Poker Road, when Poker Wire went away, I went back to Mad TV.
Mm-hmm.
I went back for a lesser position. But it still felt like a family to me. Remember, I started there when I was 20 years old. And when it got canceled in 2009, I was, obviously 9 years older. So, and that had been my LA family. So the day the news came in that Mad TV was canceled, I cried. I actually went home early. I was like so devastated. Again, it wasn't about the loss of the show or the job. It was just like, oh, this family is going to get broken up. And it just so happened that when that was ending, that's when Poker Tonight sort of developed into being a thing. And those guys, for all their faults, they paid me really well.
Great. And
then, like I said, at the tail end of that is when the big game happened in 2009. And the big game just was a full-time job. I was so overwhelmed. I was sick. I was, first of all, I almost didn't get the big game.
So tell us about that. So tell us about that transition for folks watching, listening. What is the big game?
Sure.
How did you get involved? All that shit.
So the big game was a cash game TV show, which obviously I'm biased. I think is the best poker TV show that's ever been on the air.
It was.
I think the concept, it had everything you need for a good poker show. It had great lineups. It had someone who was living their dream and or could potentially win life-changing money. And the pot sizes were quite big, some of them over $500,000 regularly, if I remember. And so all of those things firing on all cylinders. I happen to think the show would have been a success with or without me.
Mm-hmm.
But I am very grateful that I was able to take so much of what I wanted to bring to the table. They let me do it.
Great.
I was like, I can't say I invented these things. Obviously I didn't, but I came in with as you guys know, with a very heavy pop culture, internet references, sarcasm, movie quotes, anything I could do to make it poker more relatable to the audience at large and entertain them. That's what I wanted to do. And I was so lucky that the show was so great. I was so lucky that, well, first of all, I guess let's go back. So they're developing this show. A couple of people who are listened to at Poker Stars said, hey, you got to put this guy, Joe Stapleton, on it. He's your man. The people who said that were a fellow named John Caldwell. I don't know if you guys know him or not. A fellow named Barry Greenstein,
Mm-hmm.
and a fellow named Daniel Negreanu.
Wow.
And Daniel was adamant that it be me. So they had all but hired someone else, as the legend has it. And Daniel was like, you're making a huge mistake, and like jumped up and down. And I had auditioned, and I'm not going to lie, I was probably not very good at the audition because I wasn't very good when I first started doing it. I had no experience, and that was what they were afraid of. So they said, okay, compromise, because we want this to be a high level analysis show. Also, Compromise, we're going to hire him a coach.
Really?
A poker coach.
Okay, got it.
And so Jimmy Fricky, aka Gobble Boy, was who they decided was going to be my poker coach. And he and I used to watch every episode together via Skype. And he would say, he's raising this and this amount because for this reason and that reason. And I was like, oh, because I'm supposed to be the analyst, right? Like Chris Rose is there to say what's on the screen. I can't just like say what the outs are every time. I got to be able to fucking say something smart about poker. We watched every single episode. Most of what you hear me saying is information I have more or less just completely was dictated from Jimmy or transcribed from Jimmy. And we did that for the entire run of the show. And for about 5 or 6 years of the EPT as well, I took him with me to that, at least for the recorded stuff. Look, when I'm live, I'm on my own. I got nobody in my ear. But for that stuff too. So they hired me a coach so that I wouldn't sound stupid. And Daniel got his way, and I got hired. And I was very lucky on all accounts to have gotten that.
Unbelievable support.
Yeah, and
man.
that show was really, really stressful. We used to, we did something like 100 episodes of that show the first season. Not all of them original episodes, but we did every contestant we had, whatever. It was a lot. And I had never done it before. And the executive producer of the show was really, really intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
Was not abusive the way the other guy had been, but definitely was a scary dude.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to sit on two sides of the glass, and he would sit on that side with the engineer. And every time I said something that was wrong or timid or he didn't like the joke, he would slap this button and go, stop. And I got to the point where if I saw any movement from the corner of my eye, I was like the kid that's been beaten by the hairbrush. When the second it goes up like this, you're like, ah.
Crazy.
And so Chris Rose took the executive producer aside and said, get the fuck out of here. Go sit out there. You're terrifying this kid. He can't work. Go out there. You can come in and watch it after and fix all the things you want, but this isn't working.
It's really hard to be creative in that type of environment.
Well, I was fucking up. He was right about everything, right? What the problem was that I didn't have enough confidence to deal with that in that moment because I was already nervous enough. It was my first time doing a TV show. And I'm really grateful that Chris took up for me. This fucking guy who's insanely successful, one of the best broadcasters in the world, and was like, go outside, come back in. And that gave me the little bit I needed to actually get the words out of my mouth to actually be able to do that. And then we proceeded that way from then on. But you can tell if you listen to those episodes, I'm more timid. You can hear the shakiness in my voice. You can hear that little bit of lack of confidence. And obviously my voice has developed over the years, literally, as you do when you use it constantly, it changes. But my whole demeanor, everything about it is way different back then.
What advice would you have for people who are in that situation now, whether it's like your industry or our industry or in their career or in their journey, where they're not fully confident about themselves and they're dealing with people who just continually raise that kind of insecurity? What advice would you have for them to try and get through it?
Well, that's a really good question. And I'd be interested in hearing your guys' takes on this too. I think that the majority of the world is too confident. I think that people aren't underconfident enough. I thought that I still to this day think the lack of confidence I had in that moment was exactly justified. I was in over my head a little bit. For me to have gone in there cocky, thinking I was good at something that I was actually pretty terrible at it, that sort of unearned confidence, I think I would rather people be underconfident than be overconfident. I think way too many people have this unearned, I'm good at this. And even if you are, just fucking be quiet about it. Still have some humility, have a work ethic. So all I will say is that if you are struggling with your confidence, one thing I would say is that there are very few people in the world who are really good at stuff. most people are human beings. They fuck up. They're not that good at their jobs. They're okay at their jobs, right? Like the majority of people are okay at their jobs. Lawyers, doctors, people we revere, right? People that we automatically think are special because of some title they hold. I've met fucking so many idiot doctors who are complete fucking morons or bad people or liars or jerks. It doesn't. So when you're lacking in confidence a little bit, whatever you're doing, just know the guy who's administering the test to you is also probably just okay at his job.
Yeah. And it's like, I think everybody has that type of insecurity and self-doubt, right? Like it's normal.
Yeah.
It's just, I think you embrace it, you understand it, right? And it's like, one thing I was always taught was quiet confidence, right? And the one thing I'm trying to teach my kids is about like humble, quiet confidence, like be confident in yourself, but it's okay to be scared. It's okay to feel unsure of yourself, but it's about trying to rise above it in your mind, right? So I think you're right. Like a lot of the people I approach, whether it's not just this, not whether it's our industry or outside the industry, especially like younger than us, it's almost like I see people have this I have arrived type mentality. And it's like, no, you haven't. Like, it's like, I'm sure a lot of people are just faking it to overcompensate for like insecurity, but it's like, it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to doubt yourself. And it's like, you just got to keep talking to yourself and practicing your trade to become more confident in it.
Right.
And, you know?
And for me, that self-doubt is what drives me. That's what makes me want to get better. You know, that's that being like, oh man, getting off stage. Like, okay, so I know lots of comedians who will get off stage and say they sucked no matter what. I know lots of comedians that get off stage and think they were great no matter what. And I think that I have a pretty good barometer of going like, that was fine. That was fine. I could have been better. And so that lack of patting myself on the back all the time, don't get me wrong, sometimes I do it, right? For example, Sean, the show that you saw, I am incredibly happy with the result. I'm glad people are happy. While it was happening, I was like, this is okay. I was like, this is just going okay. And so maybe that's a little bit below where it really is in real life, but that's sort of just shaving a little bit of that confidence off is what makes me go, okay, here's what we got to do to fix it. Here's what I need to do next time differently. I'm like, okay, da, 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 da. And so if you are think you've done a job well done every time, you're never going to get any better. You got it. And so that little bit of self-doubt, I think, is healthy. I think it's perfectly fine.
I agree. And even in my industry, even in poker, we always say that I would gladly take a dealer off the street who was like, I haven't done this. You know, I've 6 months experience. I can't work at Aria. I don't know these games. I can't work at these high pressure $1 million pot situations, stuff like that. If they can admit that they might not know it all, you know, I can teach them and they don't have a ceiling. But if you come in and say, you know, I have all the confidence in the world in any industry, and you say, I'm always hitting a home run, well, that's your ceiling. You can't hit a grand slam. You know what I mean? Like you can't go any further. And in your show, you were just okay. So please get better for next month. Because I will be there again. But no, I'm just kidding, buddy. But like that's like a huge thing. And obviously I'm very confident in what I do in a day-to-day basis, but I have doubts all the time. I see other industry leaders. Hell, there are people in poker that some people don't even know. They're not on the map as big as like the poker boss. You know, even Tom tells me all the time, Sean, you're a brand. The poker boss is a brand. You got to push it and push it and push it. And, that gives me some confidence that people are paying attention to what I'm doing, which is really cool. But there are players in the game that some of you guys don't even know that inspire me on a daily basis. And they're the most humble people in the world. Obviously guys like Savage, he's full of confidence, just ask him.
I was like, you're not talking about humble people. Right?
Burn.
Yeah. But
speaking of brands.
Yeah. Right. But there's a lot of players in the game that people don't even know, and they just do their job so well. And they inspire me and they make me take a step back sometimes and reevaluate myself. And I think that's key. And I'll come out of, corporate meetings and stuff like that. I'm like, fuck, I could have been better. You know what I mean? Like I had to give a speech, whether it's, on budgets or marketing or advertising or whatever. And I'm like, wow, I didn't, I checked all the boxes, but I really didn't hit it home. So what can I do better next time? And I think, don't completely, it's balance, of course. Don't completely bash yourself to the point where you never have confidence. That's not the game either. That's not the goal. But,
I think all you need is the confidence to do it. And that's
correct.
It, right?
Correct. And I think the confidence to overcome failure, because
yes,
you're going
of
to fail
course,
a whole
totally.
shitload, right?
Yeah.
And it's like you're going to eat your humble pie a lot when you're doing, whether you're in a corporate leadership role, right, or if you're trying to grow a small business in an underdog way, or if you're trying to get on stage from a comedic standpoint, or even going through a poker hand, like you're going to screw up. And it's just like, do you have the confidence? That's when confidence, I think, really comes into play. It's like, can you rise above that failure, have confidence in yourself to keep going and get better?
And I think that something that we overlook too is we're talking about looking inward, and that's great. That ultimately we are us, right? We have this to count on. You gotta surround yourself with people who will tell you when you suck at something.
Mm.
It's a really difficult conversation to have, but like there are people I know who have been comedians for far too long. Not that many of them, okay? I'm not really that judgy of these guys, have been actors for too long or whatever it is they're doing, and their friends don't say to them, like, maybe this isn't for you. I think at some point you start doing your friend a disservice by continuing to encourage them to do something that they're incredibly unlikely to succeed at. And so I think that let's take ourselves out of the role of the person delivering the bad news. Be the person. You got to surround yourself with people that will deliver that bad news to you. Dude, your breath stinks. Yo, that wasn't the best presentation. I know it sucks, but someone's got to tell you. Like, at the very least, surround yourself with people who are better at things than you are, so you can at the very least compare yourself to them in a good way and go, okay, here's an example of someone that's really doing it. I need to be more like that.
100%. And what Joe is doing right now is he's setting it up for after this, where he sends us an email or call saying, listen, guys, you need a lot of freaking work.
Podcasting might not be the medium for you two. Sorry,
you
tough
guys.
love
Sorry,
sticks.
guys.
Stick with your day job, guys.
All right, dude. So you were on this poker commentating journey. It seems like you had an unbelievable passion for the industry. Seems like the job was very stressful, but you still like stuck it out, right? And maybe there's a gap here, so help me out, but when did you get back into like your roots of like comedic performing and shit like that?
So what happened was during this time, Huff and I decided we were going to start taking improv classes. We did that, decided improv wasn't really for me. And then we just started dabbling in stand-up again, just hitting open mics occasionally. And then what happened was there was this thing called Black Friday happened, right? So season 1 of The Big Game, huge hit. Season 2 of The Big Game, Chris Rose, he's like, guess what, dude? I'm out of here. I got a huge deal with the MLB network. I could do a TV show from home. They're going to pay me. He didn't say this to me, but I assume paying him an insane amount of money, and he doesn't have to leave his house. And he was like, this could be it. You and Huff, who had been at this point my comedy partner, my podcast partner. Our podcast we didn't know it, was blowing up. My biggest regret to this day is that we don't still do that podcast. I promise you we would be on the Rogan level right now. We didn't know we were blowing up till it was too late. And now there's an opening on this TV show. Huff gets the job. It's me and my fucking partner. We've been trying to be on TV together for 10 years. It's happening. We're in the recording studio recording like our fucking 15th episode together. None had aired yet. And I see this Facebook status that says GG Online Poker.
Oh, no.
And then I go to Twitter, and it's like, this is the landing page of Poker Stars right now. The FBI logo.
I remember.
Redacted Department of Justice. We were in the studio recording, high-fiving each other. Yeah, man, we're doing it. Those shows never aired in America. It was a Friday, obviously. On Monday, me and James had taken over for Lon and Norm on the NAPT. That was going to premiere on ESPN2 the following Monday. It did not premiere. Those shows also never aired in America. I was supposed to have 2 TV shows on at the same time. Fox, ESPN2. Oh my God, Stapes. My we're golden.
Blowing up. Yeah.
Now, I say this, lots of people fared way worse after Black Friday than I did. But from my own perspective, this is what's going on. And PokerStars went, it's cool. It's cool. We're done in America. We're done. We're going to pay you. We're going to keep doing the shows. We're going to pay you. Don't worry. We're going to finish out the season. It's fine. But we do. And I was like, cool. Well, I was on TV for a minute. Great. Wonderful. Career's over. And they said, we're pulling out of America. We're leaving America. But we still do programming in the rest of the world, that was mind-blowing to me. Again, I was a very American-centric person. I didn't realize people were doing funny poker stuff overseas. I didn't realize there were poker shows overseas. And they said, do you want to do those shows? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Fuck yes, I want to stay on TV. Please, whatever I have to do, I'll stay on TV. And so I commuted back and forth to London, like once a month, once every 6 weeks, or London or Barcelona or whatever, for about a year and a half.
From LA or Vegas?
From LA.
Holy wow.
And they eventually were like, yo, what's it going to take? Do you want to move here? And this podcast that we did, I loved it so much. And I said, you know what? I can't do it. I love the podcast. If you're not going to fire me, if you're going to let me keep commuting, I'm going to keep commuting. They said, that's fine. About 6 months later, my co-host, Huff, finally gets his dream job.
Okay.
He becomes a development executive, TV producer, and has to move to New York City. He quits the show. So now I'm like, all right, well, hello, PokerStars. Is that offer to move to London still on the table? They said yes. What number do you want? I told them. They said yes in 10 seconds, and I was like, shit!
Damn it!
I asked for nearly enough money.
Come on!
Fuck! God damn it! Fuck!
Lesson for everybody. Ask for more than you think you're worth. Period.
So I moved to London. And when I moved to London, guys, my life was so fucking good. I worked like 2 days a week.
What year was this?
This was in 2013.
Okay.
I moved to London, and I was working 2 days a week. And I said, you fucker, you've got no excuse. You're going to start doing stand-up comedy and doing it for real and taking it seriously. You have no excuse. You have nothing to do. I was going to the gym 5 days a week, working 2. Sometimes like a third day if I picked up there's like another poker network in the city that I could be on sometimes. You're doing comedy. You're fucking doing it. And then what happened was, because I was American, because I was already on TV on a big channel in the UK, the UK poker came on like their NBC. And I had confidence from already being on TV that I'm not saying I was amazing, but I got to skip the first couple of really awful steps in stand-up of like going up there and just literally bombing and like fumbling through your words. I automatically had a stage presence. I automatically had a point of view because I was an American living in London, and I automatically got laughs I didn't deserve because my accent sounds funny. The same way if a British guy gets up on stage and calls someone like a cheeky bastard, you just kind of chuckle at that. It sounds kind of funny. So I could get away with being like, boy, isn't London crazy? And people would laugh because I'm saying it with an American accent. And so I was so fucking lucky that I didn't have to go through that crawling through the mud phase while you're being screamed at. Mm-hmm. I got to skip right to, okay, now we got to scale a wall and run fucking 25 miles. But that first little bit, I got to scoot past that, which was helpful because that's where most people don't make it. Right?
No shit. Did not know that.
There. Yeah. Is that, it's just that you do it like it happened to me. I did it one time back in 2003, and it was such a awful, scary, gut-wrenching, like embarrassing experience to me that I didn't do it again for like 8 years.
Wow.
And so once I picked it back up again, I skipped all that. Only by virtue of the fact that I was like, dude, you talk in front of a live TV camera. You can go on, you do this for your job. It's just not comedy. You stand there with a microphone and interview the winner at the end. You say, thanks for coming to the EPT. You can go on stage with a microphone. And so that very first, like, what is a microphone? What is it like? I knew that already. Mm-hmm. So that part I got to skip. Got it.
How long were you in London?
I was in London for 2.5 years. And then I said to them, look, guys, I really love it here, but it was never my intent to live here forever. And the work was drying up a little bit. I was still a freelancer, even though I lived there. And so, they went from making 52 episodes the year I moved to London to like 36 the next year to 24 the year after that. And I was like, hey, I think I want to move back to America. They said, no problem. What do you say instead of LA, it's like tough. It's a really tough commute from LA. They're like, how about New York? New York, you can, and I offer this. I was like, I can move to New York. I can be on a red eye. I can work in the morning. Like I could literally get off a plane and be into the office by 10 in the morning. And they went for that. And then what happened was I did about 8 months in New York and had a great time. Had just a fucking lovely time in New York. But I got an opportunity, a manager for a big management company called Principato Young. In Los Angeles. They rep like Seth Rogen, and I mean they're just one of the biggest comedy management firms. One of their managers reached out to me, and we had a meeting in LA, and he's like, I'm down to sign you, like I want to rep you, but you got to move back to LA. And I was like, done. I had missed LA with all my heart. LA, like I said, LA is what is my spirit animal. Like this is the day I woke up, was the day I moved to LA. I wanted to get back here super bad. So I moved back to LA in like 2016, and we've been commuting sometimes now back and forth to the UK, a little bit less now, as nobody's really making poker content anymore except for Poker Central, and that's wonderful that they do it. I don't work for them that much, so now I'm starting to. My next job might not be a poker job, so. We're trying to figure that out now. I've got a commercial audition later today.
Oh, buddy.
I've got a voiceover agent, so I do like that's why I have this little headset.
Yeah, it's really cute.
Wake up in the morning and be like, the Pennsylvania lottery is now $100 million. And I'll record that like 400 times and try to decide which one is the one I want to send in. I'm doing some freelance writing. I've got obviously stand-up now. Stand-up, what's amazing about stand-up is this. I'm probably this year having opened for Norm a bunch of times and getting paid for that, which is, I'm good, just to be honest, I'm not complaining or bragging, is a very small amount of money. Mm-hmm. With that, I'm probably in the top 1% earners of stand-up comedians in the world, just the few times I've been paid this year. And there's no possible way I could live on it, even in like fucking Kansas.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And
I don't think a lot of people know that, Joe.
Yes. Even when you start, like, I'll be very honest, like the Vegas comics that you saw, Sean, the other night, they made $50, which is for a comedian is an insane amount of money to make. Like wow, $50. Like that's really good. Most comedians are performing for free most of the time. They're happy to get $50. However, you can't live on $50 once a week, or $50 3 times a week. It just doesn't work. So even if you're even the guys you're seeing at the Comedy Store here in LA, they're getting $50 or $100. Bill Burr's getting $100 to get up at the Comedy Store. But what you're supposed to do is you live on that, the 100, and then all of a sudden you start getting booked to like go travel and headline places, and then you get paid like $1,000 for the weekend, $1,500 for the weekend, and all your travel's taken care of. So that's when you start making money. But it's even when you're a successful comedian, like semi-successful comedian, it's real fucking hard to make a living at it.
So I love the transparency, right? Because number one, I think any aspiring comedians need to know that if they don't yet, right? But then also I think it's mad respect to comedians out there who are trying to break through, and folks should know like your support means a ton, right?
Yes.
So
it's mad respect for those comedians, but also especially for the ones that don't come from a place of privilege. And I know that people hear that word and they're like, oh, I'm so sick of hearing about privilege. I grew up with a blue collar. My dad was a postal worker and my mom was like a stay-at-home mom and then eventually became a teacher. I did not think that was privilege. I thought that was like the hardest life story that anybody had ever had, that I moved to LA with only $5,000 in savings, right? And then I came to LA and I was like, holy shit, I was so fucking privileged. And so, especially in the stand-up world and the acting world, the people who are out there doing it who don't have, look, my parents don't have any money, but if I fucking didn't work for the next year, I could go home. I could live with them. I could probably borrow like a couple of grand from my parents. There are plenty of people out there that don't have that safety net at all. And those people who are really alone out here and really have just come from nothing, mad respect for those people, because I'm also doing it from a place of privilege now that I have money from poker jobs.
Yeah.
Right. I can afford to, I fucking flew. I went to the Florida gig I did, I did that at great expense to myself. Like, I think I spent $450 doing a set in Florida because I have a little bit of money from other jobs that I can support this hobby / other career of mine. The people who, when comedians like go to places and like don't buy a drink, at like an open mic place and the bar gets mad, it's because they don't have it. Like, some just don't have $5 to buy a drink. So tons and tons of respect for those people.
So so I'm going back to New York to LA, right?
Yeah.
How did you get involved? How did the whole opportunity opening up for Norm come about? Because that's like, I know we kind of glanced over it, but that's a pretty big fucking deal if you stop and think about it, man.
Maybe the biggest deal of my entire life. That a guy that I grew up idolizing. Like, I mean, I would sit there and record myself doing Weekend Update jokes because of Norm. Norm's appearances on late night talk shows are legendary. I have them on VHS tape still. I have him, the original night it aired, him on Conan making fun of Carrot Top in one of the best improvised moments I'd ever seen him up until that point in my life. I have that on tape. So to become friends with this guy, to talk comedy with him, to have him say, I like you enough that I want you to open for me on the road. Have you guys heard this recently? Someone asked Chappelle, who is the greatest stand-up of all time or the greatest working today? And he said, Norm MacDonald.
Mm-hmm.
I fucking open for the guy that Dave Chappelle thinks is the greatest stand-up. So yeah, it's a huge deal. It's
how do you even process that? How do you, like, right now, looking back on this whole journey you've been on, how do you even process that?
It happened so slowly that it was actually easy to process, because he would be like, Joe, I think I want you to open for me on the road, like on a direct message on Twitter. And I was like, oh my God, that's crazy. Like, yeah, thanks. When? And then he'd write me back like 3 weeks after that. And it got to the point where, and my girlfriend is like the most supportive human ever. She's wonderful. And she would always be like, did Norm write you back? Did Norm write you back? Did Norm write you back? Did Norm? And then what happened is he would always start up a conversation with me at like an inopportune time. And I remember one time I was having sex with my girlfriend and she was like, are you thinking about Norm right now?
Oh my God.
I was like, here it comes. I know it's
like,
coming.
Yeah, I'm thinking about Norm. She's like, do you want to check your phone? And I was like, yeah, I kind of do. And I had a message from him. And so when officially he asked me, hey, this date, we're going on the road, what that moment happened, I was like, finally. It was not, I didn't have that like elation. I kept thinking it was going to get yanked away from me at any point, which is one thing I would say that I'm not very good at. I don't really revel in my successes. It's like, okay, that's done. Put it aside. What's next? I don't really do too many victory laps. I will, after a show, like just go out and get completely shit-faced and like fucking fist pump myself into oblivion. But that's it. Like that night, it's all awesome. And then the next day I'm like, that was yesterday. What's the next thing? So I was just more relieved that the Norm opportunity became real, that I didn't have like this jump up and down moment, but she did. She like jumped up and down and clapped her hands and kind of did what I should have been doing. But yes, the processing of it still at this point, I'm like, that really happened. Like I fucking opened for Norm. Like that's awesome.
That's a commonality among all of us. But then actually every single one of our guests we've had on this show so far to like share their entrepreneurial journey, every single person has said the same thing. Like, I hardly celebrate my successes or even stop to think about how far they've come. And you know what? I think it's a great thing. I think maybe it's what continues to drive us. But I also think like we should probably stop and smell the roses a little bit more than we do sometimes to feel good about the journey we're on. And I struggle with that, man. I don't know about you.
You're probably right. But like we all know people who do that way too much, right? I'm like, I don't want to be that fucking guy.
No.
Like that just makes me not even want to do it at all. Like I don't want to be the guy. No, like, and so I think you're probably a little bit right. And maybe it's the same for you guys. I keep saying like when this thing happens, then I'll celebrate, right? And that thing either comes and goes, or it's this thing that's so unattainable and down the line, if anything at all. I'm like, all right, when I do the Tonight Show, then I'll stop and smell the roses. And you know, there's good and bad with that. You know, there's good and bad with that. Like maybe I should stop and smell the roses at some point between now and that. But also, fucking why?
Right.
Why should I? Like, why should I fucking take a break for a second until I get that goal? So I don't know what the right answer is there, except for just few and far between on the victory laps for everybody.
Amen. All right. So I was thinking about like how you were talking about earlier. Well, you made a comment earlier. You referenced comedy kind of as your like little side thing, right? And that poker commentating's your career.
Yeah.
Do you see that shifting? And how is your new kind of show in Las Vegas affecting that?
Yeah, so I would love for it to shift, especially because at first I thought, I would make like a gag about how I, can't wait to get out of poker. I'll leave you guys fucking in the dust as soon as I can, as soon as I get my game show, as soon as I'm flipping tiles over on Game Show Network, I'll forget all your fucking names. I used to do that as a bit, even though it's partially true. Obviously, I wouldn't be such an asshole about it. But yes, if I got an opportunity to fucking host Fear Factor or whatever, I would, obviously take that. But what's happening now is, I'm not saying this for attention or but poker doesn't have as much need for me at the moment. I'm working at the moment less in poker than I have in the last 10 years. I don't have really anything planned for 2020 as far as poker is concerned. Do I think things will come up? Yes. I got guys like Run It Up who still are very interested in having me around and do stuff for them. But the market for poker entertainment is getting smaller and smaller, and that means there's less of a need for a guy like me. So now, instead of it being like, well, one day I'll probably get out of poker, now I'm don't have a choice in the matter, right? There is no big game. The EPT TV shows don't exist anymore. Poker Night in America is still going strong, but they're a small company who knows, you know what I mean? Like nobody's got a certain future in poker at the moment, especially on the entertainment side.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously you guys are both in businesses that are kind of, recession proof, we'll call it, that there's always going to be live poker is alive and well. People are still playing poker and they need playing cards, so that's all good stuff. But as far as like watching it, there's really only one game in town now, and that's Poker Central. So if you're not working for them, there's less things going on. So now I'm, like I said, I've got a commercial agent, I've got a voiceover agent. I'm taking tons and tons of meetings. I'm like one of these LA meetings guys now, where I get together with them, friend, what ideas do you have? Oh, do you think this will work? And I have a tiny little bit of credibility now as a host of things, right? I'm like, I've got a ton of live TV experience, live funny man stuff that, I'm putting myself out there, hanging out with all my old people at TV shows, reality shows, travel shows. I'm just trying to see what sticks right now. I'm writing a pilot.
Oh,
At the
wow.
moment.
Tell us about that.
I don't know. I have a writing partner, and I'm not sure what he wants me to say about it. So, but I'll say this. I have had dozens of ideas over the years, and this is the first time I'm actually writing the pilot. And just as an exercise, and let's say that I write this pilot, and the pilot, nobody wants to buy the pilot, which is like 99% likely to happen. But now I've written a pilot. And I can write another pilot because I did it already. And it's kind of like the stand-up thing where once you do it, okay, I've done it, but you got to do it. You have to actually do it and finish it. So I've got all kinds of things going on right now. I've got a very interesting and exciting writing opportunity that not even really sure is real yet. It's like very similar to the Norm thing that I'm not quite prepared to talk about it yet, but I'll tell you guys off air if you want. Until it's real, until it becomes a real thing.
Right. You don't want to jinx it. I get it.
Yeah.
Right. I get it.
Jinxing it. And also, like, I don't want to, let's say I tell you guys what it is, and then the people I'm talking to are like, that was really not really supposed to be talked about. Like, I just, people lose their jobs so easily.
No, I get it.
For stuff these days. There's like a million other people who want these things. So if you do one thing they don't like, they can be like, all right, fucking jog on, brother. So, the question is, I don't know what's next for me. It could be that someone makes the big game again tomorrow, and all of a sudden I'm doing 100 episodes of the big game again. That's kind of what things are like in this industry. It's never boring. And, it's gamble up, everybody. That's what we do.
So we'll do a few more questions, Joe, because I kind of want to bring it back a little bit. Right. So
sure.
So through this whole journey of yours, right? And we talked at the beginning where you were like, I'm not very entrepreneurial. And then yes, everything you're doing is entrepreneurial, right? So what have you learned about yourself through this whole thing, man? Like from the kid who moved to Boston to go to school and figure shit out to you now opening up for Norm and everything in between. Like, what have you learned about yourself, man?
Well, one of the things I've learned is that when I moved to LA and I said I wanted to be a writer, that was a lie. I wanted to be a writer, but I also wanted to be a performer. And I lied to myself and to other people because I felt dumb. Because I didn't want to be another guy in LA that wants to be like an actor and a comedian. I felt stupid. I felt embarrassed. And I thought acting is stupid. But writing is noble. Writing is like respectable. Nobody ever like laughs that someone wants to be a writer. You laugh at someone who wants to be an actor, right? You're like, this guy wants to be an actor. And so by not admitting it to myself, I didn't achieve it. You can't achieve something. The fact that I ended up on TV anyway is fucking crazy because I wasn't trying. Like, it was secretly something I really wanted. And so I don't have a ton of regrets in life, but I do wonder, had I made an effort to do this when I was 22 years old, instead of when I was 28 years old, where would I be now? Right? Where would I be if I had stuck with stand-up in 2002? Like now I've more or less, let's say I've been doing it since 2013, right? Which is a relatively short amount of time to be doing stand-up. 2013 and 2019, 6 years. I'm okay at it, right? I'm not terrible. I'm not amazing. I would even say good, right? I'm kind of good at it. Exactly. Yeah. Like I'm decent at it. Had I stuck with it from 2003, where would I be now? And of course we can't answer.
You might be the guy saying that Norm's the greatest comedian of all time, greatest stand-up. Maybe you're Dave Chappelle.
Exactly.
I mean, you just need to put the tan stuff back on.
Exactly. Yeah. It's an alternate future where blackface is totally fine. Also.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but you're right. But also, maybe I burn out. You never really know what would happen. But that is something I question. That's something I've learned about myself. So I would say, and I think I admitted my dreams to myself more, even though I still lied to myself more than most people do. Mm-hmm. I think that there are millions of people out there who know what they really want to be doing or what they wish they could be doing, and they also keep it buried because that having to come to terms of you having a dream and you not ever having tried pursuing it, I think is a tough pill to swallow for some people. So what I would say is, and look, people say it's never too late. I agree with that. But the earlier you can be honest with yourself about who you are, the better. And I've also come to terms, what I've learned about myself is that a lot of people will be like, no, I don't want to be famous. I just want to do my craft. You know, I do want to be famous. I absolutely want to be famous, not for the reasons you think. Although those are somewhat appealing too. Like, I'm not going to lie, the things that like famous people, there's certainly a set of problems that come with it. Don't get me wrong. But I want to be famous because I want to fucking be good to people. I want to do cool things for people. I want to walk into a restaurant and be like, I'm paying for everyone's dinner here. I want to fucking buy a bunch of laptops for kids in school. I want to have influence so I can do good things, money and influence for those reasons. And is that ego driven? Sure. Fine. I don't care. People will be like, well, that's not, there's no real such thing as a good deed because it makes you feel good. Great. Fine. Don't care.
Whatever. Right.
Is it, would my ego be fed by the fact that like I put like a bunch of random people through college through like, so, yeah, it would be, but who cares? Because a bunch of random people are getting put through college. So I've learned that about myself too, is that I want those things and it's okay to want those things. And if people want to mock me for that, no problem. I own it. I own those things now.
People who would mock you for that just wish they had that. Right.
Some of them for sure.
100%.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, and it's probably because other people are in those spots and they don't do those things. And then there's a selfishness and insecurity that comes. You and I are very much cut from the same cloth in that. And you know what? Like if that's something people say feed the ego, well, you know what? It's better that type of shit that feeds the ego than all these other bad things that feed a lot of other people's egos.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so good for you, Joe. That's awesome, man.
Cheers.
And then, all right. So yeah. Woohoo. Where you at, Sean?
Mine's just cold brew, but it's actually, I don't know if you guys have ever had a nitro cold brew. It's stronger than any drug I've ever done.
It's this damn Belgian beer.
I got you right in the
By the way, I think this is like you ever see these bottle openers?
I have one of those.
I might do some Faded Spade ones. I don't know.
When you know how like when you first get into poker and then you go home for Christmas and then your parents buy you all this fucking dumb poker shit.
Yeah.
I have
Except Faded Spade cards, Joe. Those aren't dumb. All parents should buy their kids.
By the way, I just want you to know, I should tell you this. Whenever I go to a meeting with someone I know is a poker fan, I bring the cards you sent me and I give them.
Shit.
I'm like, these are the cards they use on the World Poker Tour and on high stakes poker and poker after dark. These are the ones. Here you go.
Thanks,
enjoy them. So yeah, I give them away as like little, I don't know, like thanks for the meeting gifts.
Awesome, brother. Good. At least they're put to good use, right?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, thanks for that support. And that's one thing about our industry too, Joe. And you mentioned this before. The support you get from it, if you do right by people and people believe in you and they see the passion that you have, like the amount of support you can get from our industry. And I'm sure it's similar in the comedy world. Like, doesn't exist a lot of other places, man. That's just really, really cool.
People say that, and I don't know because I don't have experienced many other places, but I will say that what you have described is absolutely true. That's, you know, the support I get from, for example, when I have a comedy show in Vegas, people like Sean, industry people come out, running up people were there. I think a lot of Poker Central was still in London doing whatever, but, you know, Jess Wellman was there. People that, people are very supportive and people understand, I think, that it's a small industry and that if we don't, it's so niche that without ourselves as the audience also, we're almost nothing.
Right.
But if we can be a bit of the audience and a bit of that initial boost for each other, then it's easier for other people to come on board because you go from baseline of 0 to baseline of like something. And then we can bring in people from the outside.
Amen, brother. All right. So a couple more things and then we'll wrap up the Founder Hour with Joe Stapleton. So, all right.
More like the Founder 89 minutes.
Are you complaining? I mean, we can edit.
That would be great. Yeah, if you edit it down and I sound like a jerk right there. Stapes can't tell time.
I edit the words like ego and I have ego and hate people.
I want to be famous. Fuck you guys.
All right. So for anybody listening or watching this who is on their journey right now, whether it's comedy or performing or commentating or just trying to build their own vision for their life, like based on your experiences, what would you tell those folks?
Well, some of it's going to be recapping. Do the thing. When people write to me on Instagram and they go, I want to be a stand-up comic, I say, go out and do comedy. Just go do it. You don't have to be good. It doesn't have to be. What's that phrase? It's like perfection is the enemy of, maybe it's good enough is the enemy of perfection. I don't know. A lot of people, when following their dreams, it's so important to them, right? That they want the thing they do the first time to be so perfect, right?
It's not going to be.
I'll send it to you when it's ready. Do it before you're ready. You'll never be ready. You will never, ever, ever be ready. Do it. You got to just do it every day, right? It will be bad. It's going to be bad. But bad is better than zero.
Amen.
Because if you're a bad comic, you're still a comic, right? You're still getting on stage. That was the main reason I started doing stand-up, actually. I didn't know where I wanted to go with stand-up, but people would say to me, oh, you're a comedian? I go, yes, I am. They go, do you do stand-up? And I went, no, I don't. How can you be a comedian and not do stand-up? Yes, it exists to a certain extent, right? There's like improv guys or pundits or whatever. But I was like, what a fucking lame answer. It's like being like, oh, are you you want to be an Iron Chef? Yeah. You cut vegetables? No. Like it's like one of the things you gotta fucking do if you want to call yourself a certain thing. So do the thing. Realize that yes, there are people who are incredible at it out there, and those people are to be respected and admired, but most people are just okay. Mm-hmm. And almost all of them sucked as bad or worse than you did when they started doing it. The expectation to be good at something right away, I think that part of our problem with our culture now is that we all expect instant gratification. And sucking at something is really tough for us to deal with because everything is so easy, right? Mm-hmm. Everything is. Have you been so lazy that you're like, iPad will pop up that it needs an update and you're like, oh, I got to press 3 buttons? Fuck that, right? Like that's where we're at as a society. So when you pick up a guitar and you're like, bleh, 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 fuck this shit. Like this is hard. And that is something we got to get over. You got to do it. And anybody who's ever, whether it's working out or playing guitar or doing comedy, they say it sucks and it sucks and it sucks and it sucks. And then one day you're like, this is, at the very least, you might not be good at it. You're like, I like it. Mm-hmm. I like it. And you go, I can do this. I know I can see a difference between now and when I sucked at this. And I think that we quit on things too easily, that we give up on things too easily because it sucks. And there's so much out there that doesn't suck. Netflix is amazing. I could watch Netflix for the rest of my life and never not be entertained, right? Like, but those distractions are there. Like, we got to fight those distractions and we got to do the thing that sucks. Sometimes doing it for 20 minutes a day is enough.
Great advice, guys, from Joe Stapleton, who has lived that journey. And the next part of the journey, magic wand, brother. I know you say you're not sure what's next and you got a lot of shit going on, but magic wand, what do you really want to be getting into over the next few years?
Magic wand, I want to be doing TV. Doesn't have to be my own show, but like, let's say a reasonable goal, right? Be like a panelist on a At Midnight type of show, or Lights Out with David Spade. Maybe even I'm not going to say again comedy special. I like to keep I know that you're supposed to dream big, right? Mm-hmm. I like to keep my expectations reasonable, because if you can see that next goal, right? Like if you're looking up at the top of the mountain, fuck, man? Why don't you just look at this next rung? Like, what's a reasonable rung for you to grab next instead of like constantly, I'll never get there, but I can get here. So for me, here would be to do more road gigs next year, over the next year, do more road gigs, possibly open for some other bigger comedians for this Vegas show to be a success. I'm a little bit worried that we blew our load with friends and family coming out and being supportive. This second month, I think, will be even more important to a certain extent to see if we can maintain that, especially ticket sales. And I would settle for a TV appearance doing stand-up comedy. I'm not talking about a special, but like, you know, you got like Friday night comedy on Comedy Central, and there's like 6 comedians that do 4 minutes each. Something like that over the next couple of years is attainable for me. And then also, I got my eyes on like a travel show, a game show, a reality show host. I'm not necessarily interested in being a contestant just yet, although if 2020, if my calendar doesn't fill up, I might do a Big Brother submission tape. Who knows? So yeah, I think those are all attainable things over the next couple of years.
Awesome, man. All right. And then where can people connect with you? How can they go see your shows? All of that fun stuff.
So I do tons of shilling on Twitter. It's at Stapes on Twitter. On Instagram, I do plenty of shilling as well, at InstaStapes. I'll say this, my Twitter isn't super entertaining anymore. Between the fact that Twitter has become more of a place for talking about current events and the fact that jokes on Twitter, like Sean, I did a Jeffrey Epstein joke on stage Friday night. I wouldn't put that joke on Twitter because it's not worth it. Like I used to love putting jokes out on Twitter, and on Twitter, people just want to be pissed off, and that's okay because they're not necessarily there for comedy, right? Like that's why this whole thing we're in right now. Sorry, I'm like running off at the mouth. All you wanted to know was my fucking handles. Anyway, my Twitter's not as fun anymore, at Stapes, but plenty of messaging there for where you can see my shows, where I do lots of jokes, at InstaStapes on what's it called? Instagram.
That little platform, Instagram.
That one.
I can attest. Anytime I see a feed from Joe, I'm usually laughing. And
my Instagram is entertaining.
It's definitely entertaining.
Yeah, I'm not like trying to like make a statement as much on Instagram. So that's probably a more fun place to follow me if you've heard of Instagram.
And when's your next show at the Space?
Next show at the Space is October 11th. I've also got shows. I don't know when this comes out, but I've got 2 in LA next week. If some of your listeners are in LA, including the Comedy Store a week from today on the 27th of September. And our Vegas shows are October 11th and November 22nd are the next 2 shows at the Space. And you can get tickets for those at thespacelv.com.
Boom. All right. Well, Joe, man, thanks for taking time to do this, man. I know you're hustling. I know you're trying to build your business, your brand, everything you're doing. So taking 90 minutes out to come join us to tell that story, to inspire some people. And there's the high quality content from the poker boss, Sean McCormack.
I don't disagree. You will never find me being like, don't you fucking talk shit about Albany, New York. That's the capital region. I'll have you know.
For those listening, Sean Sign says Boston is greater than Smallbany.
Tom loves these because I do it every single show. So like when you see me like looking down and like,
is it always Boston?
No. I mean, I even have some of the old ones here.
Can we talk about this Boston poster in the background, by the way?
What's wrong with the Boston poster? Like this was my one for Lynn, obviously. They're just on the floor in my office. What's wrong with my Boston poster?
Look at this Boston poster. All right, BOST. On what fucking planet is a triangle an O? Everyone knows it's Boston. Everyone knows a triangle is an A. We all love the Sitco sign, but it's what?
Thank you for knowing the Sitco sign. Like a lot of people don't know that, but yeah. Where else were you going to put it? I mean, it makes sense.
It makes no sense whatsoever. Find another O. It's a circle. It's
What's wrong?
If I didn't like you already, Joe, I love you even more knowing you're a New Yorker and you give Sean shit about Boston. Guys, I hope you really enjoyed our time with Joe Stapleton. Be sure to connect with him Be sure to check out his new show at the Space in Las Vegas. Did I get that right?
You got it.
And, thank you so much for taking time to watch the Founder Hour of the Faded Spade Podcast.
A pleasure, guys.
Bye, all.
The Faded Spade Podcast is sponsored by Duck Productions. Contact them for all of your podcast editing needs at randy@duckduckpro.com.
Upgrade to Faded Spade and get 15% off the new face of cards with code PODCAST at fadedspade.com.